Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for our good friend, Saam Pahlavan.
And M.James short.
Hello.
So I wanted to start this talk with this video from a movie called Art School Confidential. To give a background, Adam Scott, the guy on the right, plays a famous artist coming back to this art school he attended, and he's giving a big lecture.
Mr. Bushmiller, the New York Times has called your work an expedition to the far contours of an evolving technoculture. With that in mind, where do you see art headed in the 21st century?
Art who? No, really, that's such a stupid question. Why don't you ask me something relevant? Ask me how much money I have in the bank.
Did you learn anything at Strathmore?
Yes, I learned many things. I learned that the faculty is made up of old failures who teach only because they need the health insurance. Present company excluded, of course.
I was about to say.
No, David here was too busy trolling the halls for fresh meat to worry about his health.
What advice would you give to a young artist that's...
Shut up. Look, there's really only one question any of you want to ask. You want to know what it would take to turn you into me. Well, listen closely, because I'm going to give you the answer. In order to be a great artist, you simply have to be a great artist. There's nothing to learn, so you're all wasting your time. Go home.
Why are you such an asshole?
That's a great question. No, really, it really is. I am an asshole because that is my true nature. Maybe it's everybody's true nature. Every single one of you looks like a fucking asshole to me, but who knows? The difference between you and me is that I have gained the freedom to express my true nature. And what could be more beautiful than truth and freedom?
Just like that clip. He just calls everyone an asshole, and they're like, yeah, okay. So this talk is a bunch of random stuff, but also about our game. So there's going to be just like random clips in between. Yeah, so let's get started. First thing, video games are dumb. This is a game called BioShock, where you start out in an airplane, and then the airplane crashes, and then you go to this submarine that takes you to this underwater city, and this guy's like, hey, I made this underwater city. It's really cool, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool city. And you get in there, and you get a wrench, and you just start murdering people, and then you go walk around, and then you eat trash. And then at the end, they tell you you're a bad person or something. I don't remember. So video games are dumb. I'm Saam Pahlavan. Yeah. I recently joined the Juegos board. I just want to give a brief thing about that. I entered this game this year and also became a committee member this year. I'm not eligible for awards or anything. And the game went through the same judging process as all the other games, just to clear that up. Yeah, so more about me. I make art. That's my Bob Ross painting. I have a lot of game ideas. I have a tweet thread where you like a tweet and then I tweet a new game idea. I have a lot of game ideas. I also make mistakes. If you guys don't know what lean is, it's like an alcoholic drink that has cough syrup in it. I don't recommend drinking it. I also make games. These are just a couple shots. Some games I worked on. Probably haven't heard of a lot of them except for this one. Yeah, this one got featured by Apple and stuff. It was really cool. I made it with our studio, Taco Illuminati. And I'm also very good at video games. So this is an article from the first Fantastic Arcade I attended, where I beat Zach Gage at Splunky. Next year I won the Nuclear Throne tournament. And then I have a sweet MLG video for you guys to show off how good I am at Overwatch. So I'm gonna play that. Does anyone play this game? All right. That was exciting for like 2 people.
I loved it, Sam.
Thank you. That was made by my friend Ben. We call him Senpai. And the last clip was by another friend, Grace. Yeah, so the reason I think I'm good at video games is I'm pretty good at understanding the language in video games. To kind of explain this, it's like, you know, when you play a game, there's inputs and stuff that go in, and then there's like, the game does stuff, and it tells you stuff. But in between that, there's like language, right? So I'm just gonna loop this clip to kind of explain this. Every game's language is pretty different, but you know, across genres, there's stuff that is apparent. So Overwatch is a competitive game. You play against people. In this clip, if you're watching this first time, you're like, what is happening? You just moved to the right and missed another shot. But basically, what I'm doing is like, there's another player looking at me that's also a sniper, shoots at me, and then I fake right to say, I'm going to pop over there, and then you can see that they're looking in that direction where I would be. So that's a case of like language between players where I'm using the game's language of movement to say I'm going right.
Do they see a HUD icon for you as you're going right behind that wall?
No, they cannot see me. So they're trying to guess my movement, and then I fake them out and come back and miss a shot first, which I should have landed. But yeah, that's kind of like an example of video game language. Another example is like, most people know what Tetris is. If you saw a screenshot of Tetris and like a line block and there's 5 empty blocks, you'd be like, oh, I know what's gonna happen. Yeah, so our game, Bill Hates Video Games, is hopefully kind of touching on the language of video games and that kind of history that's already there for video games. Yeah, so the game we're working on is called Bill Hates Video Games. It's about an asshole named Bill, this guy, who gets sucked into a video game. I actually started on this back in 2013, the initial idea or concept. This was the first thing I drew. I remember being very, disappointed and just kind of upset because I remember I was looking for a job at the moment. And I just kind of drew this character where I was like, what if I made a game that was like, I could say and make jokes about video games, like do whatever I wanted, because most games are kind of trying to be immersive or do this other thing, but what if you just break that meta window? So yeah, these are some super early screenshots, which is weird seeing Bill with a gun now, 4 years later, because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's weird. Yeah, I think the initial prototype was just very nuclear throne-ish, where you would walk around and shoot stuff. Yeah, so the reason I decided to finally start making this game after trying to make it for 4 times by myself. I went to GDC 2017. On the left is Sam Coster. I met Sam when I first moved here. He has a studio with his brothers called Butterscotch Shenanigans. We're the same age. So I met him at a local conference here. Really cool guys. A week later, he found out he had stage 4 cancer, which was crazy. And basically, he wanted to make this game that would eventually be his game, Crashlands. And at GC 2017, he gave the whole postmortem about that journey and how crazy that was. And it was a very proud and I don't know if humbling is the right word, but just seeing him up there and seeing what he went through and to make, the thing he wanted. And it was just insane. It inspired me so much. Along with Rashid Aboide, I hope I said that right. Rashid is from Palestine, and he made a game called Layla and the Shadows of War. He was also at GC 2017, part of the #1 reason to be talk. And hearing him talk about, his struggles being in Palestine and making a game that's, was first rejected by Apple because of it might have had political connotations, which was kind of crazy. And then seeing the community back him up and eventually got his game released and had a lot of positive feedback. But just hearing his story was super inspiring. So after GC 2017, I just was like, all right, it's time to actually sit down and make this thing. Yeah. To make Bill Hates Video Games. This is a random slide called Good Level Design. That's a giant toilet. And then I dab on it. Okay. That's good level design. Yeah, so I needed help making this game because I tried to make it by myself so many times. So I got M.James Short to help me out.
So I'm M.James Short. How's everybody doing today? What?
James, how are your Overwatch best play clips going to match up to Saam's?
I'm not as good as my daughter. She carries me a lot through Overwatch. Her and her friends, her girl gang of Overwatch players. But I'm more of a Fortnite player myself. So not as good. So I release games as Newmark Software. You might have heard of some of them. King Candy Crush Saga, presented by Microsoft Publisher 98 and Chevrolet. Arnold getting kicked in the balls in Total Recall. This classic of Arnold getting kicked in the balls in Total Recall. Not another Minions Triple X. This is trademarked and all rights reserved. My company, by the way. This is a great point-and-click adventure. I don't know if anybody's into those types of games here. Yes, that was a fleshlight. Hyperemesis Pizza. I released this on iPad to pretty good success with another local person here. Then there's some other ones. Chrome Death, Den Venstre Hadenstig, Brigade Force. And then that brings me to Saam. So I was working the Tumbleseed booth at South by Southwest with my wife, and Saam came up to me last year and said, "Hey, you know Game Maker." And I had just moved over to Game Maker from Hacks. I used Hacks for 7 years. And then when I couldn't get something on Hacks onto a console, I checked out different engines, ended up on Game Maker 2. And, we started working together in secret on Bill Hates Video Games.
Yeah, I had been working on a lot of projects where I was just doing art and design, and I wanted to get back into coding, so I picked up Game Maker. And I specifically remember when I talked to you, I was like, I need a programmer that's not going to question anything I say, because this is going to be very dumb.
Yeah. And that was actually super attractive to me. I'm still working on my own games where I do design, coding, art, and everything, but it was really fun to just work on something for somebody else where they give me tickets, and I just go in and figure out how to do it. I love that part of programming and game design is figuring out problems, so it was fun to do it for somebody else.
Yeah, so we worked on this game without telling anyone for about a year. We would meet at this place called the Silver Grill Cafe. These are nachos from there, and they don't look that good. They're really greasy, and they make you feel terrible after you eat them. We went here so often. I usually wouldn't order food unless it was like dinner. I think the last couple times we went, they would only bring out one menu because they knew you would order food and I wouldn't. Yeah. And then you also ordered this thing called the cheddar pour.
Yeah, the cheddar pour. So I definitely am a culinary adventurous person who likes to order the most ridiculous thing on the menu wherever I go. So this is, you have a picture
Brace
of
yourselves.
This is called the cheddar pour. So this is a hamburger where after they make it, they pour cheddar cheese. I think it's 5 cups over the top of it. They let it sit and then they bring it out to you. It's like a skirt around this thing. This did not make me sick, which tells you a little bit about my constitution and the types of food that I normally eat.
I just like that you can see the highlights of grease on the cheese. Yeah.
It's got
Okay.
a nice brownness to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks good.
All right, so why did we not tell anyone about this video game, or why did I not tell anyone? A lot of reasons is I wanted to work on something kind of without worrying about what people thought of it, or just something for myself. And I feel like in a lot of like game communities, you go to a meetup or something, and people are like, they just start asking you about your game and not asking about you or how you're doing. So the main reason is like I'm not my work. I'm not just this game. I do other stuff. And it's really nice to work on a project where you don't tell anyone else, because it's just like when I worked on it, it was kind of like going into my own space. And
Yeah. It's meditative.
yeah. Yeah, do you have anything to say?
Yeah,
about it?
I'm the same way. I mean, besides suffering from imposter syndrome and always thinking that somebody is going to take my great ideas, like you saw up on the screen, and do it better than I did before that, I spent a long time doing game jams for 5 years, where I was just making a game every weekend or making a game in a week and putting it out, and it was a very it was a rough process, but also it was a very public process, right? And there was something very interesting about just working on something and having fun working on something and not really worrying about people's comments on it or people seeing it or other people's opinions on it.
This next clip is called "The Best $5 I've Spent on Twitch." This clip gets pretty loud.
I told you that Zoe Burger chick. I don't know why I'm following her on
Hold on.
Snapchat.
So we're back
She
here.
went from like twitching and like shaking her.
No, Sam donated $5. Let's go! Sam's man.
Sam.
See, hey!
Those people are all very drunk. Yeah, so to talk about the art style of Bill Hates Video Games, if you look at it, you're probably like, oh, it looks like Home Movies or Dr. Katz. I haven't seen much of Dr. Katz. I watched a little bit of Home Movies when I was a kid, or like preteen. But I don't think I got the humor at the time. It was just like a weird show that came on Adult Swim. Do you want to talk about these shows?
Yeah. When I first saw Saam's art for Bill Hates Video Games, it was one of the initial things that kind of pulled me to the idea, besides the idea of not just tearing down video games themselves, but like tearing down ourselves as part of the video games. I love Dr. Katz. I watched it religiously when it was on. I loved Home Movies. And that kind of like really shaky art, I think is something that you don't see a lot out there. Adam Saltzman gave a really great talk in Austin a couple years back at one of the meetups about how what the game looks like and people's first view of that does a lot to actually sell the game. So when I first saw this, I was immediately like, okay, this is something that I want to work on. This is something that stands out than a lot of the other screenshots that are on the App Store.
Yeah, for me, our game is more inspired by a show called Ed, Edd and Eddy, which I watched a lot growing up. I'm just going to play a clip from that. It also uses kind of that boiling line art.
I hate hockey. My father makes me practice. Oh, dear, Jimmy. I didn't know.
Could have sworn it was him. Chin up, mister. Let Ed try those. I should have all the feeling back in my feet after this word from our sponsor, Double B.
So yeah, that was a show on Cartoon Network. I also forgot there's a lot of meta stuff in that show, which inspires our game a lot. Yeah, so here's the evolution of kind of the art style, 2013. I worked on kind of like a Flash animated version, 2015. And then I made the Perfect Boy this year. So you'll see in like 2015 he has arms, and then he doesn't have arms now. He technically has arms. Every time I draw them, I'm like, this doesn't look perfect. So now the game looks like this. It's kind of like based off of a Zelda type thing. Yeah, it's interesting because like whenever I open this screen, I'm like, oh man, this is dope. I'm pretty happy. Yeah. We can play the game now, I guess.
Let's check it out. Do we have any questions while he's getting this fired up?
Yeah, if you have any Overwatch
questions.
tips that you want to know.
Overwatch questions,
Sam is
Destiny, Fortnite, any
Fortnite,
kind of questions you have.
Sam is available for Overwatch.
A million.
That was most kills in 30 seconds, a million. That's made up.
Guinness.
Yeah. Sorry, wrong build. There we go. So the intro of the game, right now it asks you a bunch of questions. They don't actually do anything. They will eventually. But they're mostly for like difficulty and accessibility stuff. So I'm just gonna blast through that. Actually, if y'all want to answer this, do we? No? What? Okay. All right. Do we have? I'll just go one, two, or three. Chill time. Okay, great. This is more of like a puzzle question. I'm not very good. All right. The response is the same each time because, yeah. Oh yeah, so this is where the game gets explained. Backstory. Yeah, Bill wakes up. So originally, Bill just kind of got sucked into a portal, and then I had my friend Rusty play it, and he was like, "Why don't you just make him get sucked into a video game if you call the game Bill Hates Video Games?" And I was like, "I'm an idiot. I should do that." Yeah, and this next screen is kind of the title screen. I want to touch on the music here. So usually when I come up with a game, I make a playlist of kind of what I want it to sound like. And Bill Hates Video Games started with Bill's theme, which is inspired by the band Diamond Rugs, and they have a song called Gimme a Beer, which is basically about a guy who's wants more in life, but he's kind of apathetic, and at the end of the day, he just wants a beer. A very good song. So M.James Short composed all the music.
Yeah. So in this demo that you hear, I did all of the different songs here. So not only that, what were some of the other playlists that you were inspired by?
There's a lot of Doze 1 stuff in there, and then there's the Neverhood soundtrack is a big inspiration.
Is everybody familiar with the Neverhood? No?
Neverhood was
Too
this
young of a crowd.
claymation game back in late 90s.
Yeah, mid-90s.
And it had this soundtrack by this guy called Terry S. Taylor, and it's like there's a lot of weird vocals and chanting and stuff.
There's a lot of unorthodox instruments used in it to form the soundtrack.
Was that the game where you would like eat something and then belch, and you would keep doing it and
Yes.
belch longer and longer and longer
Yes.
until you
Yeah.
belched for 15 minutes? Yes, I do remember that game.
Video games are done wide.
Yeah. And to throw it back to Nuclear Throne, I was trying to make the portal effect you'll have between levels, and then I just made a ring, and I was like, whoa, this looks better than I wanted, so I kept it. So yeah, in this next scene, Bill wakes up inside the video game, and he's greeted by a kind of your familiar guiding NPC. See if I get the volume up. I can play with the controller. Do you want to play it?
Yeah, I'll play.
Yeah, I know the frames are a little low, but yeah. So we use the speech bubble stuff. I don't recommend doing text like this ever because it's a pain in the ass.
Dynamic speech bubbles in games are not fun to make at all.
The rest of this talk might be just me telling you what not to do when you're making a game. So yeah, Bill just wants to go home, and our NPC Nagy is like, "Hey, you gotta do these challenges. Come on, let's go do video gamey things." I don't know why the frame rate's being weird. Yeah, so in the game, the blueprint is Zelda. When I first initially wanted to make it, it was like, how do I make a funny Zelda game? Yeah, if you want to show walking around the tree.
No, that's good.
Okay, so when you get to the flowers, just don't skip the text. Yeah. So like right here is an example of video game language, right? So we're telling the player, press B to smell the flowers, and then when you actually try to, go ahead, press A. You fart, so yeah. Yeah, so the fart joke isn't just a toilet joke. I want to clear that up, but it's also a joke about video game controllers and how there's so many damn buttons on one. So that I was like, what if there was a button that just did something really stupid? Yeah. So this is the first kind of puzzle room. It's a play on your basic tutorial stuff. We recently implemented this thing where you can see what Bill is thinking if he has a little light bulb, and you'll get kind of some more information about Bill and kind of his thoughts on the situation. So yeah, super hard puzzle. Did you guys figure it out? Cool. So yeah, Bill comments on how there's really nothing else to do in here. Yeah, we implemented the thinking stuff after getting some feedback about people wanting to do more and learn about the character, and I wanted a way that wasn't like interacting with items to have to like put a bunch of items in a room and have him say stuff. So it's also something I want to play with later, with maybe being able to see what other characters think. So this is like a very classic Zelda puzzle. Yeah, so Bill doesn't have arms, but he can pick up stuff.
Sam, did he just pick that bomb up with his crotch?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you go in here, it's a fun little corpse and a chest. There's a lot of stuff in this game where I wanted to have it react to the player. So like if you backtrack a little bit, Nagy will say stuff like, hey, we already did this. And there's a lot of more systems involved with that. The tricky thing with doing design like that is you kind of have to watch what people do in your game and then react to it. So, you know, not everyone's going to do the same thing, but if enough people do it, then we implement some kind of feedback for that. There's actually a big change we made. There's like an encounter at the end of this dungeon, and recently I had someone who couldn't figure out how to get past it, so we implemented like a way that you could get past it without doing the necessary steps. I'm trying to be vague because it's a spoiler, and I think it's fun to like find that stuff out. I like it in video games when like you picture this thing in your mind and you're playing the video game, and then you do it, and then you're like, and then it happens, and you're like, oh, they actually thought about putting that in the game. This statue thing is just like a visual gag. Do you want to do the thing?
I'll pick it up
Yeah.
on my back.
Yeah, like an example in Breath of the Wild, I remember there's like a campfire, and then there's these bees that are around this cave, and they start chasing you. And I was like, oh, if I take the bees to the campfire, maybe that'll make them go away because of like smoke and stuff. And that happened, and it was just like a really cool, I don't know, experience and like the video game language of like, oh, this is a thing that kind of happens in real life, and then it did happen in the game. Yeah, so we're taking this rock back because this little shrine-looking thing says, bring Jeffrey to this flower. It's like a little puzzle. So if we bring Jeffrey back, Jeffrey starts talking to you, and he says he'll grant you a wish. And there's a sweet Seinfeld riff.
So do you want to talk some more about responding to feedback, right? So we've let a bunch of people play this now, and everybody has like really good feedback to it and talks about, you know, things to improve, or, you know, watching people try things and going back in. Is there something else that we saw from that feedback that we went back in and changed?
Well, I think not having, like, we worked on it for a year, and then we started playtesting. And once we started playtesting, I got more to the core of what I think the game is.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's a game about making video game jokes, but initially I had all these designs of like, oh, it's going to be like this cool Zelda game and it's going to be better than a 2D Zelda. But now I'm like, oh, it doesn't need to have all that. It doesn't need to be like mechanically crazy good in combat or any of that stuff. It just needs to be like lighthearted and fun and keep kind of players interested in the story and jokes.
I think what's trying to be said in here doesn't necessarily need to have deep mechanical things to provide good commentary on it.
Right. Yeah, so this is a typical Zelda puzzle where there's a dark room and you have to light the torches, and you find out that that's not actually the solution to the puzzle. Oh, the frame rate just went.
It looks
awesome.
There.
Yeah. All right.
It's because it's sharing up there.
Yeah. So this lantern is weird because like people like to hold on to it, and I don't know what to do about it. You can actually destroy the lantern, and then if you take it far enough, Nagy mentions like something about it.
So we discussed this with the lantern, right? We got feedback. People tried to carry it all the way through the game.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever done the gnome quest in Half-Life 2? So we talked about that, right? We talked about, oh, hey, yeah, in Half-Life 2, you could get the gnome at the beginning and take it all the way through. Maybe we should reward players. But then we discussed that they probably realized at the end of the game that you could actually do that rather than being something they planned for.
Yeah.
And planning for those types of things creates a lot of complexity to it. So we force you to drop it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this next room is the trial of truth, where you have to answer questions. So Nagy's going to try and feed Bill the correct answers. Oh, also I record all the voices myself. I just pitch them up and down.
What's the instrument you use to make all the sound effects?
Oh, I
in the
use this
game?
thing called the OP1, which is amazing. It's like a little keyboard synthesizer, and it has a bunch of insane MIDI inputs, and it's crazy. There's apparently a hidden helicopter game in it, too.
Did you use that for the farts?
Yes.
That's a disappointing answer. Tom.
No, most of the sounds are like, I use a sound library, but I want to find someone who's like a actual sound designer to give this game a unique kind of score. Because the neighborhood has like very distinct sounds, and so like Ed and Eddie, you guys heard it a little bit, but there's like a really weird sound design in that show, and there's like a lot of horns and stuff, which I would like to integrate into this game.
In which you'll get to hear some of it in a minute when we get to the boss.
Oh yeah.
So do you want to talk about this area right here? So originally there was a puzzle here.
Yeah, there was a
with
basic
bow.
like
Yeah.
bow and arrow puzzle where you shot the bow at a target and then the bridge came up, but it was better to have more of an opportunity to like have more of a character moment, so I changed it to like more of a dialogue thing. And that's kind of an example of like shifting from like typical Zelda stuff to more video gamey language joke stuff.
It goes back to what you said earlier about originally this was more Zelda-like,
Yeah.
right? And very mechanical, and we realized that that's not necessarily what we needed to do.
Another thing Rusty gave good feedback on is he mentioned the GDC talk from West of Loathing, and how instead of like rewriting all their jokes, they just put a crap ton of jokes in their game. So like quantity over quality, and
Yeah, it's the Abram-Zucker theory, right? That the more you throw out, at least something's going to hit.
yeah. So this initial demo barely had stuff in it, so I just kept adding more and more and more. Yeah, this next room becomes the bow and arrow room.
You
And
get to hear some of the music that is based on the neighborhood.
yeah. I wrote the bass line to this one.
You did?
Yeah.
You played it live? Arms are really weird. Arms are like the hands of animation.
Yeah. If you have to draw arms and he shoots a bow, you gotta animate that
Yeah.
shit, and I'm not gonna do that. That's
Animating arms really sucks. Like
Yeah.
legs, you can do 2 frames and you're done. It's call it a day. But
yeah. Another rule I have a couple rules for this game when I'm working on it, and one is like only do the art 1 time,
Yeah.
because I have to mostly draw everything 3 times. So yeah, this is like your typical Zelda battle. Smash 1 time. Just 1 time, yeah. So if you played Zelda, you kind of know how this boss works. Yeah, you can go ahead and solve it now. Yeah, so this like chanting music stuff is very Neverhood. We use like a synthesizer to make the chanting sound. Yeah. I wonder what we do now. So yeah, that's one way to defeat this boss. And then the boss has some things to say.
Sam, we just have a few minutes left before we're going to start getting ready for our
Cool.
next block. Would you like to take any questions from the
Yeah.
audience? Does anybody have any questions for Sam and James?
Also, I want to take this moment to thank M.James Short for allowing me to convince him to make this dumb game. And I've been recently going to his place to work on the game. And his family's been very welcoming to me.
all the dogs hanging out.
Yeah. Go ahead and don't pull the sword.
Okay, I'll leave it alone.
Yeah, y'all can play the build that's on the laptops downstairs if you want to see what happens after this.
About how long do you think the playtime is for this?
Oh, it's pretty short. It's like 10 minutes, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Should we just wrap up?
Yeah. Do you want to pull the sword?
No. I
No.
don't wanna
No.
Show. Yeah, thank you for
Ladies and
Thanks everybody
gentlemen,
for your time. We appreciate it.
Saam Pahlavan and James M. Short.